The rain hammered against the glass walls of St. Jude's Trauma Center, blurring the neon lights of the city into streaks of bloody red and bruised purple. Inside, the air smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. Stella stood at the nurse's station, her eyes fixed on a dosage chart. Her hand, holding a pen, trembled, a fine, rhythmic tremor. Tick, tick, tick. "Look at her," Dr. Sterling sneered, leaning against the counter. He was the head of the night shift, a man whose ego took up more space than the crash cart. "Earthquake Stella. I swear one day she's going to miss a vein and puncture an artery. Why is she even on my rotation?" The other nurses giggled, nervous sounds meant to appease the king of the ward. Stella didn't look up. She didn't blink. She finished her chart, the pen strokes jagged but legible, and set it down. "I asked you a question, nurse," Sterling snapped, stepping closer. He loomed over her, smelling of expensive cologne and arrogance. "Are you deaf as well as shaky?" Stella looked up. Her eyes were gray, flat, and completely empty of fear. It was a look that usually unsettled people, though Sterling was too full of himself to notice the predator hiding behind the prey's silence. "The patient in 404 needs his sedative, doctor," Stella said softly. Her voice was raspy, barely a whisper. "I determine who needs what." Sterling slammed his hand on the desk. "You are a liability. I'm filing a report tonight. One more shake of those hands and you're out. You belong in a nursing home, not a level 1 trauma center." The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. The atmosphere in the hallway shifted instantly. 2 men in dark suits stepped out, flanking a gurney pushed by military-grade paramedics. On the gurney lay a young man unconscious, his chest heavily bandaged. Following them was a tall, imposing man with silver hair and a trench coat, General Marcus Thorne. "Clear the hallway," one of the suits barked. Sterling straightened his tie, his demeanor shifting from bully to sycophant instantly. "General Thorne? We were told to expect the VIP, but not this level of security. I am Dr. Sterling, chief resident." "My son," the general said, his voice like grinding gravel. "He was ambushed. If he dies, everyone in this building answers to me." Sterling nodded vigorously. "He's in the best hands." Stella watched from the shadows. She wasn't looking at the general. She was looking at the paramedic pushing the gurney. He held the gurney with his left hand. His right hand hovered near his waist. Stella's tremor stopped. The hospital was a fortress of glass and steel, but tonight it felt like a cage. The storm outside intensified, thunder rattling the surgical trays in the OR prep room. Stella moved silently into room 404, checking the vitals of the general's son, Captain Elias Thorne. The monitors beeped a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Outside the door, 2 military police officers stood guard, rifles across their chests. Dr. Sterling was at the main desk, loudly berating a junior intern to impress the general's detail. Stella adjusted the IV drip. Her hands were rock steady now. The phantom adrenaline that caused her tremors in quiet moments had found a purpose. She sensed the shift in air pressure before the alarms triggered. A low thrumming sound echoed through the ventilation shafts, not wind, rotors. Then the lights died. The hospital plunged into absolute darkness for 3 heartbeats before the red emergency backup lights flooded the corridors, casting long, demonic shadows. "Power failure!" Sterling's voice cracked in the hallway. "Get the generator logs! Someone call maintenance!" "Comms are down," a security guard shouted. "Cell service is jammed." Stella didn't move toward the door. She moved toward the window. She pressed her hand against the cold glass, looking down at the loading bay 4 stories below. 2 black vans had pulled up. Men were exiting, moving with fluid, tactical precision. They weren't maintenance. They wore gas masks and carried suppressed rifles. "Breach," Stella whispered to the empty room. The door to room 404 burst open. It wasn't the guards. It was the paramedic Stella had noticed earlier, the one with the wandering hand. He had a silencer screwed onto a pistol. He raised the weapon toward the bed, toward the unconscious captain. Stella didn't think. The quiet nurse vanished. She grabbed a heavy oxygen tank standing by the wall. As the assassin squeezed the trigger, she swung the steel cylinder with torque generated from her hips, not her arms. Clang! The tank collided with the assassin's bone. The bone snapped with a wet crunch. The shot went wild, shattering the window. The assassin grunted, shocked, turning to face the small, trembling woman. He saw the nurse's uniform. He expected fear. Instead, he saw a combat stance, legs braced, center of gravity low. "Wrong room," Stella said. The assassin was a professional. He ignored the shattered wrist, switching the gun to his left hand with a fluid motion. But Stella was already inside his guard. She stepped in, driving the heel of her palm into his chin, snapping his head back. As he stumbled, she grabbed a pair of trauma shears from her pocket. She didn't stab, she jammed the blunt handle into the pressure point behind his ear. The man's eyes rolled back and he collapsed like a sack of wet cement. Stella caught the gun before it hit the floor. She checked the magazine, full, and then, with a look of disgust, she engaged the safety and slid it under the bed. She didn't use guns, not anymore. Too loud, too messy. The door flew open again. Dr. Sterling stood there, holding a flashlight, his face pale green in the emergency lighting. "What is going on? I heard glass break. What did you do?" He shone the light on the unconscious man on the floor, then at Stella. Did you kill him?" Sterling shrieked. "You crazy woman! That's a paramedic!" "He's a cleaner," Stella said, her voice flat. She moved to the door and locked it. "And there are 6 more coming up the stairwell. We need to move the patient." "I am in charge here," Sterling yelled, panic making him irrational. "Unlock this door. I'm calling security on you." "Security is dead," Stella said calmly. "Check the hallway." Sterling hesitated, then peered through the small glass window of the door. He recoiled, retching. The 2 military guards were on the floor, throats cut. "Oh, God! Oh, God!" Sterling slid down the lull, hyperventilating. "We're going to die! They're here for the captain!" "They're here to erase the captain," Stella corrected. She grabbed the rolling bed. "Get up, doctor. You're going to help me push, or I'm going to use you as a sandbag to block the door." "Who are you?" Sterling whispered, staring at her as if she were an alien. "You're just a nurse. You shake when you hold a cup." "Adrenaline is a funny thing," Stella murmured. She ripped the IV bags from the stand and hooked them to the travel clips. "Grab the ambu bag. Keep him breathing. We're going to the morgue." "The morgue? Why?" "Because nobody looks for the living among the dead." The corridors of St. Jude's were a kill box. The red emergency lights turned the white walls into a nightmare tunnel. Stella pushed the gurney, moving with a speed that belied her small frame. Sterling stumbled alongside her, squeezing the ambu bag with trembling hands. He was useless, a liability, but Stella needed him to look like a doctor so she could look like a nurse if they were spotted from a distance. "They'll check the elevators," Stella whispered. "We take the service ramp." "It's too steep." "Then pull harder." They reached the junction of the east wing. A shadow detached itself from the wall ahead. A mercenary, wearing night vision goggles. He raised his rifle. Stella didn't stop pushing the gurney. She accelerated. "Duck," Stella ordered. Sterling dropped. Stella shoved the gurney violently forward. It became a battering ram, slamming into the mercenary's knees. As he pitched forward over the patient, Stella vaulted over the gurney. Mid-air, she grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall mount. Gravity brought her down, and she brought the steel canister down with her. The impact against the mercenary's helmet rang out like a church bell. She landed in a crouch, spun, and kicked the rifle away. Sterling stared from the floor, his mouth agape. You just... "Keep bagging the patient," Stella hissed, grabbing the mercenary's radio. She held it to her ear, listening to the chatter. "Team 2, check in. Status on target. East wing clear, moving to ICU." Find the girl, the nurse, vital sign 0 on operative kilo. Someone took him out close range. Stella clipped the radio to her scrub top. They know I'm here. That buys us time. Buys us time? You just made us targets. Why are you doing this? Just give them the patient and we can hide. Stella stopped. She turned slowly to face him. The red light cast deep shadows over her scars, invisible in the daylight but stark now. I don't leave patients behind, and I don't negotiate with terrorists. Now move. She guided the gurney toward the heavy steel doors of the laundry chute room. It wasn't the morgue. That was a lie to calm Sterling. She was heading for the boiler room, the heart of the building, the only place with walls thick enough to stop a bullet and hot enough to hide thermal signatures. The boiler room was a labyrinth of pipes, steam valves, and roaring machinery. It was deafeningly loud, which was perfect. Stella parked the gurney behind a massive generator. She checked Captain Thorne's pulse. Thready, but stable. She stripped off her white nurse's cardigan, wrapping it around the captain's head to dampen the noise. Underneath, she wore a simple gray scrub top. Her arms, usually covered, revealed a tapestry of faded burn marks and shrapnel scars. Sterling saw them. Your arms. Industrial accident, Stella lied. She opened a medical cabinet mounted on the wall, an emergency burn station. She grabbed a roll of silver duct tape, a scalpel, and a bottle of isopropyl alcohol. "What are you making?" Sterling asked, his voice trembling. "A bomb?" "Distractions," Stella said. She taped the scalpel to the end of a mop handle. "Doctor, I need you to listen. They are going to sweep this floor in 3 minutes. I'm going to turn off the main gas valve. It will trigger a containment alarm. The doors will seal automatically." "You're trapping us in here with them?" "No, I'm trapping them in here with me." Suddenly, the radio on her chest crackled. A voice, smooth and cultured, cut through the static. "Nurse Stella. Or is it Agent 409? We didn't know you were retired here. It explains the tremors. Nerve damage from the Damascus operation, yes?" Stella's face hardened. She didn't respond. "We have the hospital administrator, Mr. Halloway. He was very helpful with the security codes. He says you're a mute, a cripple. Send out the captain and you can go back to emptying bedpans." "Halloway?" Sterling gasped. "He sold us out?" Stella picked up the radio. She pressed the button. Her voice was no longer raspy. It was cold, clear steel. "Come and get him." She smashed the radio against the pipe. "Damascus? Agent 409? Who the hell are you?" "I'm the night nurse," Stella said. She reached up and yanked the fire suppression lever. Halon gas hissed into the room, creating a thick white fog. Visibility dropped to 0. "Stay down," she commanded. She disappeared into the mist. The tactical team entered the boiler room in a phalanx formation, 4 men, lasers cutting through the artificial fog. They couldn't see anything. Their thermal optics were useless against the ambient heat of the boilers. They were blind. Stella wasn't. She had memorized the layout of this room every night for 3 years during her smoking breaks that she never actually took. She knew every pipe, every valve, every shadow. She was above them. She had climbed the maintenance ladder to the catwalk. She held a high-pressure steam hose she had disconnected from the main valve. The lead mercenary signaled to move forward. Stella opened the valve. A jet of superheated steam blasted down, hitting the rear guard. He screamed, dropping his weapon, the heat penetrating his tactical gear. The formation broke. Panic ensued. Stella dropped from the catwalk, landing silently behind the second man. She used the mop-handle spear, driving it into the gap in his body armor, right between the neck and shoulder. He went down. 2 left. The leader spun around, firing blindly. Bullets sparked off the pipes. Ping, ping, ping. Stella slid across the oily floor, kicking the legs out from under the third man. As he fell, she grabbed a heavy wrench from a toolbox and struck his helmet. He stopped moving. The leader realized he was alone. He backed up against the generator where Sterling was hiding. He grabbed Sterling by the throat, using him as a human shield. "Come out," the leader roared, "or the doctor dies." Stella stepped out of the fog. She held nothing but a syringe in her hand. "Let him go," she said. "Drop the needle. It's just succinylcholine, muscle relaxant, paralytic. Takes about 60 seconds to stop your diaphragm. You suffocate while fully conscious. Stay back." The leader pressed his gun to Sterling's temple. Sterling whimpered, eyes shut tight. "You're not looking at my hands," Stella said. The leader looked down at her hands. They were steady. He didn't see her foot hook the high-voltage cable on the floor. Stella yanked the cable. The loose end whipped up, striking the puddle of water the leader was standing in. Electricity arced. The leader convulsed, his muscles locking instantly. He dropped Sterling and collapsed, twitching. Sterling scrambled away, smelling of ozone and fear. He looked at Stella. She stood over the twitching body, calm as a statue. "Patient status?"
"He's stable," Sterling stammered. He looked at the bodies scattered around the boiler room. "You took out a kill squad with a hose and a wrench." "Improvisation is the mother of survival," Stella said, checking the leader's pockets. She found a keycard. Administrator access. This is how they got in. "Holloway," Sterling muttered, anger replacing his fear. "That greedy son of a—" Wait, if they knew who you were, why did they attack? Why not just bomb the building? "Because they want the captain alive to interrogate him, and they didn't know I was here until 10 minutes ago. My file is redacted. Deeply." "Damascus," Sterling repeated. "I remember the news. A Black Ops team vanished. They said there were no survivors." "They were wrong," Stella said shortly. She moved to the intercom panel on the wall. She hacked the casing off with the scalpel and rewired the connection to bypass the jammer. "This is Nurse Stella to General Thorne. Do you copy?" Static. Then a roar. "Who is this? Where is my son?" "Your son is secure, General. Boiler room, sub-level 2. I have neutralized the infiltration team, but Holloway, the administrator, has locked the exits. We are trapped." "Hold position, nurse. We are breaching the main doors. Keep him safe for 5 more minutes." "General," Stella said, her voice dropping, "watch your 6. The threat isn't just outside. It's Holloway. He's in the control room." "Understood." Stella turned to Sterling. "We need to move again. They'll send a second wave." "There's a second wave?" Sterling looked ready to cry. "There's always a second wave." Stella ripped a piece of her scrub top and tied it around a bleeding cut on her arm. "Doctor, you have a choice. Stay here and hide, or come with me and clear the path for the general." Sterling looked at the nurse he had mocked for months, the woman he called Earthquake. He stood up, straightening his lab coat. "I'm his doctor," Sterling said, trying to sound brave. "I go where the patient goes." "Good," Stella said. "Grab that fire axe." They moved through the sub-basement tunnels. Stella led the way, the fire axe in Sterling's hands feeling heavy and foreign. "The control room is up these stairs," whispered Stella. "Holloway is watching the cameras. He thinks we're still in the boiler room." They reached the door. It was reinforced steel. "I can't break this down," whispered Sterling. "No," Stella said. She pulled the dead mercenary's keycard from her pocket. "We walk in." She swiped the card. The light turned green. Stella kicked the door open. Administrator Holloway was sitting at the console, surrounded by monitors. He spun around, a small revolver in his hand. "You!" Holloway shouted. "You were supposed to be dead. The syndicate paid top dollar for a clean extraction." "You sold your hospital," Stella said, walking toward him. She didn't have a weapon drawn. She just walked. You sold your patience. I had debts. Holloway's hand shook. Don't come closer. Shoot me, Stella said calmly. But if you miss, I'm going to break every finger on your hand, one by one. Holloway hesitated. The psychological weight of her presence was heavier than the gun. In that split second of doubt, Stella lunged. She didn't strike him. She slid across the desk and slammed his hand against the console. The gun skittered away. Holloway shrieked. Stella typed a command into the security terminal. Lockdown override authorized. Doors are open, General. The floor is yours. On the monitors, they saw the front entrance. An armored personnel carrier smashed through the glass lobby. Soldiers poured in. Holloway slumped in his chair. It doesn't matter, he sneered at Stella. You exposed yourself, Agent. They know you're alive now. You can never stop running. Stella looked at him, her eyes cold. I'm done running. She turned to Sterling. Get the captain back to the ICU. The general is on his way. What about you? Asked Sterling. I have to chart his vitals, dryly Stella said. Shift isn't over yet.
The sun was rising, casting a pale golden light over the ruined lobby of St. Jude's. The storm had passed. Police tape fluttered in the breeze. Federal agents were swarming the building. Holloway was being led out in handcuffs, his head hung low. In the center of the chaos, the staff gathered. Nurses, doctors, janitors, they stood in a semicircle, watching. Dr. Sterling stood near the elevators. He looked exhausted, his white coat stained with grease and soot. Beside him stood Stella. She had cleaned up. She wore a fresh pair of scrubs. Her hands were clasped in front of her. They were shaking again. Tick, tick, tick. The elevator doors opened. General Marcus Thorne stepped out. He was flanked by 4 high-ranking officers. He didn't look at the police. He didn't look at Holloway. He walked straight toward the group of medical staff. The silence was absolute. Dr. Sterling stepped forward, chest puffed out slightly. General, your son is awake. I managed to stabilize him during the crisis. The general walked right past Dr. Sterling. He didn't even blink at him. Sterling froze, mouth open. The general stopped 3 feet in front of Stella. The mute nurse looked down at the floor, her shoulders hunched. Head up, the general commanded softly. Stella slowly raised her head. Her gray eyes met his steel blue ones. The general took a step back. He snapped his heels together. The sound echoed through the lobby. Slowly, deliberately, General Thorne raised his hand to the brim of his cap, a sharp, crisp salute. Major, the general said, we thought we lost you in the sandbox. Stella sighed. The tremor in her hands vanished instantly. She straightened her posture. She grew 2 inches taller in sheer presence. She returned the salute, her form perfect, practiced, lethal. I was lost, sir, Stella said, her voice clear and commanding, but I found my way back. The entire hospital staff gasped. Dr. Sterling dropped his clipboard. It clattered loudly on the floor. At ease, Major, the general said, lowering his hand. Mission accomplished. The revelation hung in the air like smoke. The nurses who had mocked her, the doctors who had ignored her, they stared with wide, terrified eyes. Major Stella Vance, the general announced to the room, though his eyes never left hers. Distinguished Service Cross, Silver Star, former commander of the Ghost Recon Medical Unit, the best field operative I ever had. He turned to Sterling, who looked like he was about to vomit. And you, the general said, his voice dripping with disdain, you told me she was a liability, that she belonged in a nursing home? Sterling stammered. I didn't know. The tremors. Nerve damage, Stella said simply, from holding a collapsed lung shut for 6 hours while under mortar fire. It comes and goes.
She took off her ID badge. She looked at it for a moment. Nurse Stella, assistant. Then she tossed it to Sterling. "I resign," she said. "We have a position for you, Major. The syndicate is growing. We need hunters. We need you." Stella looked out the shattered windows at the city skyline. "I spent 5 years saving lives to make up for the ones I took, General. I'm not sure I'm ready to pick up a gun again." "You didn't use a gun tonight," the general noted with a small smile, "and you saved my son." Stella paused. She looked at her hands, steady, strong. "No, I didn't use a gun, but I realized something tonight." "What's that?" "That sometimes," Stella turned back, a dangerous light in her eyes, "a scalpel isn't enough. Sometimes you need to cut out the cancer." She walked toward the exit, the morning sun framing her silhouette. "I'll be in touch, General." As she walked away, Sterling whispered to the nurse beside him, She was a major? A special operative?" The nurse shook her head, watching Stella disappear into the crowd. "No, she was a hero, and we treated her like a ghost."